Humans of the Cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, we are doing a video that I love to do. I wait almost about a year for it. It pops into my head throughout the year, and I cannot wait every time to do it. This is 2022's, I guess, version of what archetypes need support more than anyone else in the next upcoming year, right? We're at the end of 2021. We've got a lot of support. I will say that Konami has done a great job at getting a lot of support out for a lot of archetypes that need it. And there's still some that probably need it. So this is my top 10 list. Of course, guys, this is my personal list. There's no objective list that's perfect. So feel free to let me know your opinion down below. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What is your 10 archetype list on what you think needs or deserves? And that's the other thing too. These are archetypes that need the support, not necessarily I want the support for. I mean, it's my personal list that I picked, but still, I tried to pick archetypes that haven't seen support in a hot minute, as well as archetypes that just kind of deserve it. And you'll see there's a couple instances that just, they deserve it. So without further ado, let's jump into it and start off with number 10, which is actually Cosmo. Kind of a weird one. I love like aesthetically, and I love the lure behind Cosmo, but playing against it has been awful. They just summon big chunguses that can't be targeted, and then they float when they're destroyed. So it's a really annoying deck to deal with, but at the end of the day, like, I still think it's a cooler archetype, and I still think as long as you're playing a decent deck, you should be able to handle this deck. You just need non-targeting, non-destruction removal, and you can handle them pretty decently. So there you go. But the deck definitely struggles from consistency problems. They have a couple of starters, but usually you have to open a ship, like a big ship plus a little guy. And if you can't even do that, then like you're not really doing much at all. So consistency definitely a problem, and maybe some utility as well. Like searching Cosmojo is not like a super doable thing in the deck. So there's definitely being able to get access to this a little more easy would be nice. And of course, they've got a decent field spell. They've got a decent couple of things, but they definitely it doesn't cohesively work together as well as they probably wish it would. So yeah, I definitely like to see something for Cosmos. I don't want to see a whole reboot. I don't want to see 5+ cards for this archetype, but somewhere between 1 and 3. And as long as they're helping fix the consistency problem, I'd be okay with Cosmos getting support. But yeah, I think they deserve it. A lot of people love them. TCG exclusive archetype, one of the first like really good TCG exclusive archetypes that shined, and yeah, I think they deserve it. Why not? All right, moving on to number 9, we've got Naturia. Naturia is a really interesting one. This is a gigantic archetype. It covers like plants, insects, rocks, beasts even, right? I don't know, whatever. But there is a ton of like different type cards in this archetype. They have some interesting cards, right? Like as you can see, when Pineapple came out, people thought Pineapple was going to be ban worthy. It never was. It really never was. And then they have random crazy stuff like Bamboo Shoot. Your opponent can't activate spells and traps while this tribute summon card that tributed a Naturia monster is on the field. Like that's crazy. So there are some like pieces in here, but the fact that this deck has like never been a cohesive playable strategy the entire time it's been around is just crazy. So I would definitely like to see Naturia get some kind of support to help them do something, although maybe not too much, because I don't want them to be able to just abuse crazy cards like Bamboo Shoot. So yeah, there's number 9. Moving on to number 8, I've got Amazonas on here. I've always been a big fan of Amazonas, and I know they got support, I don't know, somewhat recently, but that's literally like what, 4 or 5 years now is when we got the last wave of Amazonas support, which was like the Princess and the Baby Tiger, Call, and Onslaught, which by the way are like the entire reasons to like the deck and think it's cool. Is like Priestess is a really cool starter card, right? Call is an amazing search card, really good search card. It's a quick play too, gotta love that. And Onslaught's kind of crazy. The problem is the deck doesn't really search legit interruption, doesn't really set up its own interruption. So if as long as you got like a cool interruption, that's all I'd be looking for. Doesn't even have to be that great, but you could at least play a control deck that rotates. You have these cool battle phase tactics and the ability to link climb with material, just because Baby Tiger's coming back every turn, and Princess is like, usually always like a +1, sometimes even a +2. Like there's some really cool stuff going on here. So I'd like to see it. And also it's a my archetype. You gotta love the main character type archetypes. when they come along. So I'd love to see this one get support as well. Just makes sense to me. I don't know. It just feels like it deserves a little better than what it's gotten. Next up is Sylvans. This is a weird one. I mean, plants are actually at like a pretty good place right now. I mean, with Sun Avalons and stuff, and Rikas being like decent newish plant archetypes. But Sylvans like were the prime example of like plants being like at the top of the metagame, and there was like obviously plant synchro and stuff like that. So there were some really cool plant decks, and this deck definitely still has some pieces. But it's definitely been power crept hard. But they do have some really cool cards. Of course, the excavating mechanic is really cool and fun. They have some pretty cool monsters like Hermitry, and of course the other one, what's the other one? Sokoya or something like that. And then Charity is just crazy. I mean, this is in archetype, Graceful Charity. Draw 3 cards, and if you have a Sylvan in your hand, reveal 2 cards in your hand, and at least one of them needs to be a Sylvan, then place them on the bottom of the deck in any order. Otherwise, reveal your entire hand and place it on the top of your deck. So this card can just be crazy. As long as you have a Sylvan card in hand, you just get to like Graceful Charity essentially, which is crazy. So I love it. But anyway, yeah, Sylvans are just cool. They just feel like they deserve it. They feel like they're one of those archetypes that's really fun, cool, and interesting. The artwork is awesome, and they just haven't seen legit support in a minute. So let's go ahead and see some Sylvan support for sure. Which takes us to the one and only Pendulum archetype on here. This is honestly like might be the only Pendulum archetype that I would really like to see support for. Maybe Zephyrs is another one, but I don't think Zephyrs need it. But yeah, Dynamis are like so vanilla. None of their monsters really do enough on field or in scale. They have some cool nifty effects, but like they don't have nearly enough impact to like really be able to play in 2021, and going into 2022. But they do still have some interesting cards. You've got stuff like Charge, which is straight up a +1. He just grabs you a Dynamis card, and then gives you the ability to add stuff from your extra deck back to your hand later on. So this card's a great like resource tool, and it stays on the field, so it makes certain disruptions better and whatnot. And then you have Howling. Howling can actually be an interruption because you can like tribute a Dynamis to target a card on the field and bounce it, which is pretty cool. So yeah, there's cool pieces with the Dynamis. I'd love to see them maybe get a Link 2, maybe get another spell, another trap. They have some searchability in there. I think it's cool. They're still missing a little something. I don't know what it is, but they can take advantage of some really cool extra deck monsters. Bahamut Toad plays because they have water level 4s and machine level 5s. They can also make Cyber Dragon Infinity, which is pretty good as well. So there's definitely some cool extra deck stuff they can make use of and be able to get good like end boards out of potentially. But they just need that one like extra deck monster that kind of like helps push them. Once you make it, it helps you get to those other ones a lot faster. And maybe just generic not Hauki Fibrax, but maybe just generic like Electromite or the new one that's coming out is kind of what we need. But who knows? But yeah, I definitely think Dynomist is like the Pendulum archetype I'd like to see the most end up with new support. Which takes us to, I think, our top 5. Starting off with Geargear Arsenal, the Geargias. I've been talking about the Geargias for a couple of years now. The one thing about Geargias is you have to be careful because Earth Machine is already a thing. Machina is coming out as like an interesting pure rogue deck. So they need to be careful on how good they make new Geargia support. But if like worst case scenario, they just get to make like a free rank 4 off of their stuff, or whatever, maybe they get a good new boss monster that's a rank 4 or something, then maybe we're looking at something interesting. But I don't know, like they just need to be careful about that. And as long as they are, this is definitely an archetype that had a little bit of fringe competitiveness back when it was in its heyday, and it hasn't really been playable since, been power crept, and it hasn't even been able to sniff the light of day. So yeah, they have some interesting pieces, like this guy who can just lone fire for any Geargia monster, this guy who's just like actually a pretty good extender, and then obviously stuff like Geargiga Next, just be able to search out any level 4 lower machine monster from deck to hand. So you gotta respect it, you gotta look out for that stuff. So hopefully we get some new Geargias. I think that would be a good one. Then we get to like the big ones. These are like my most excited for ones. Ninjas come up first here. I think the last time we saw ninja support was in Shadows of Valhalla. That is what, 3, maybe 4 years ago. I know that's kind of old, but let's be honest. That support, the Link was awesome. And other than the Link, like not much of the other support there was like that good. I guess, was Super Transformation in there? I don't even think I think Super Transformation came out before that. So yeah, obviously we have some insane starter card like Hanzo. On normal, he's adding a ninjutsu art. On special, he's adding a ninja monster, and neither of those are hard once returned. So if we can loop Hanzo in any way, we will go ahead and do so, because you just get to plus like crazy off of him. You obviously have a couple of good ninjutsu arts. Not all of them are great. There are a couple of gems though. Shadow Ceiling's like the best interruption for sure. Yeah, it's definitely the best one. And then you have Saizo. So Saizo is the card I'd like to see them expand a little more on. And by that I mean, like, we just need cards that facilitate Saizo. What Saizo does is once per turn you can just set the ninjutsu art spell or trap for free. And if he points to a monster whatsoever, he can't be targeted for an attack or destroyed or targeted by card effects. So the idea is and also the other thing that's important is a lot of the ninjutsu arts tribute a ninja to do what they do. But I don't want to tribute Saizo, especially because some of the other ones need a ninja with a good level to be tributing off. So here's what I want. I want some kind of support that helps us end on Saizo pointing at 1 or 2 ninjas much more consistently. Because Saizo gets you the interruption, and then all you need at that point is like a good ninja or 2 to be able to tribute off for 1 or 2 ninjutsu arts that are decent. And then if he stays on board, which hopefully you would be able to do by controlling the board with ninjutsu arts and everything else, he then comes back next turn and he just gets to set you another ninjutsu art for free, and you continue to play. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I think would be really cool. We just need to see it. I mean, ninjas are just so cool. That's what it is. Like, warrior is the most popular type in the game. People love them design-wise. They need a little bit of help. They've got some good pieces. They just need that last little wave of support. 3-4 cards that do what they need to do. Good extenders. Maybe one more good ninjutsu art card, and the deck can play. I'd be excited to see where they go with it. But I think at some point ninjas are going to need more support, and I'm ready for it now. All right, next up is Volcanics. I figure I had to throw this in here. It's just mandatory, right? Blaze Accelerator, you have Volcanics, and the rocket consistency pieces. They definitely need some support. They honestly should just revamp the whole archetype, but just be careful not to make it too good at burn, right? I just think it's always unhealthy if you have like a legit good burn deck in the game. But going second, this deck literally can't do anything versus Interruption, and I would assume burn decks just kind of lose going second versus decks with negates pretty much. So it is what it is. But yeah, it's Volcanics. Give them some support. Why not? Number 2, this one is one I've also been pretty emphatic about the last year or so, when I really discovered, like, yeah, it's time for Batteryman. The only Batteryman card we have gotten fairly recently is Solar Power, or Solar Power? That's not his name. Batteryman Solar. He was played a little bit in Thunder Dragons because he is kind of like generically a Armageddon Knight for Thunder monsters. But there's not a ton of Thunder archetypes that really help you take advantage of it, aside from Thunder Dragons. But the pure Batteryman deck actually has some cool pieces. You've got 9 Volt. 9 Volt searches any Batteryman from deck to hand. He does destroy himself on the end phase, but theoretically, if we could maybe get a Link 2 or something, or some kind of boss monster that makes use of getting 9 Volt off the field, you wouldn't feel like you're wasting him too much. But yeah, that would definitely be really huge. You also have like random cards like Batteryman Charger. This is just a once per turn monster reborn. 500 life points, reborn any Batteryman from grave, and it doesn't target. So they have some other pieces, and there's other ones too. Charger's interesting. Obviously Solar is interesting. The big boy is kind of interesting because he only needs to banish 2 Batterymen from grave to summon himself, and he does have, high attack stat, he can apply pressure. So I don't know if they'd want to make it a going second deck or a going first deck, but they definitely need some help some way, some form, and I just have always loved their designs. And maybe it's a new way to make like another Thunder archetype like somewhat relevant, because before Thunder Dragon, I don't know if there ever was a really relevant Thunder archetype. So I would love to see that. I think their designs are just so fun, so cool, and just the epitome of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? So I'd love to see it. I think this would be such a good option. Which takes us to our number one. I've talked about this for years and years now, 2 to 3 years, right? Tellarknights need support. I think as far as this list goes, this might be like the biggest fan favorite one because they're warriors. They're like space knights. They're awesome. They've been competitively relevant. So a lot of the players that are still playing competitively, or maybe players that have phased out, maybe if they see Tellarknight get support, they come back to the game because this was their favorite competitive deck at one point or another. Stuff like that. I just think this deck just makes so much sense for Konami. I think it would be a huge hit if they actually gave them decent support. It doesn't have to be crazy. I'm never asking for these archetypes to be meta, by the way. I'm just saying, I've even made videos on certain types of these decks talking about what kind of support I'd like to see. I've talked about a Link 1 that could be kind of really good for the archetype. I've talked about a new monster that just says search the spells and traps in the archetype, like the Skybridge, which is this, or the Omni Negate, which would be cool, be able to like actually be a 1 card disruption, or just stuff that like in general helps you get to Trevere faster, because that's like really what the problem is. The deck's just a little bit too slow nowadays, so you need maybe a little bit of in-engine stuff to be able to get to Trevere just so slightly faster, and then we are cooking with gas. But until then, the deck's just a little bit too slow. It takes too long to get your play started. It takes too long for you to get to Trevere, or if your opponent has 1 negate, you kind of just are in trouble, and that's not where you want to be. We need better for Tellarknights. So hopefully we get that support throughout 2022. Konami's been doing a good job. We got our Magnet Warrior support. We got our Weather Painter support just recently. Those were 2 decks that were like staples on this list. Like stuff would have been bumped for those 2 if they didn't get support fairly recently. But yeah, these are the archetypes to me. Definitely let me know your list down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have thoughts on as far as what archetypes deserve to be in here. But yeah, it's always fun to talk about this stuff, and hopefully Konami listens. Who knows? They seem to have listened about Weather Painters, but we'll see if they listen about this stuff. So that's gonna do it for me here today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, like I said, leave me your thoughts in the comment section, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.